Preah Khan Kampong Svay. The ancient temple complex of Preah Khan Kampong Svay is the biggest single religious enclosure constructed during the Angkorian period, 1st to 15th century. Compared to other Angkorian temples, very little historical data is known about Preah Khan Kampong Svay. Even its date of origin is a subject for debate, with some sources claiming the complex dates back to 9th century, while others claim the 11th century. What is definite, however, is that the site wasn't rediscovered until the late 1930s, and from then on, up until as recently as the mid-1990s, it was heavily ransacked by both archaeologists, official expeditions, and looters alike. Apparently, the latter used equipment such as diggers and drills to unearth and detach treasures, and, as a result, the central enclosure in particular is a crumbling mess. Ironically, it's this abundance of decay coupled with the encroaching jungle and remote location, more on this later, that make Preah Khan Kampong Svay one of the most atmospheric temples in Cambodia. Before moving on, it's important to point out that Preah Khan Kampong Svay is not the same as the Preah Khan Temple at Angkor, Siem Reap. As the crow flies, the distance between the two locations is 95 km. What's more, the well-known Preah Khan is just one temple, whereas at Preah Khan Kampong Svay there are a number of structures and a large baray, lake, spread out over an area of approximately 5 km too. The local name for Preah Khan Kampong Svay is Prasat Bakan. Where is Preah Khan Kampong Svay? Preah Khan Kampong Svay is situated in northwestern Cambodia. The major city to the south is Kampong Thom, while Preah Vihear city is to the north. The jungle forest in which it is situated is called Boeng Peye Wildlife Sanctuary. Siem Reap and the main temples of Angkor are located to the west of Preah Khan Kampong Svay. Why we wanted to visit Preah Khan Kampong Svay? We are fanatical about Angkorian temples and wanted to visit Preah Khan Kampong Svay on our recent trip to Cambodia, March 2018, in order to complete our Angkor to-do list. We've visited the main temples, Angkor Wat, the Bayon, Ta Prohm, etc., at least half-dozen times, the disputed temple of Prasat Preah Vihear twice, the first time when it belonged to Thailand, many of Cambodia's lesser-known Angkorian temples, mighty Wat Po in southern Laos, on more than one occasion, and also a few of the Khmer temples that are now located in modern-day Thailand, Phimai, Phanom Rong, Muang Tham. Preah Khan Kampong Svay has been on our radar for many years, but because of its hard-to-reach location and terrible infrastructure, namely the roads, it has always eluded us. Simply completing our Angkor to-do list was a good enough reason for our visit, but we had the added incentive of knowing that, because of its remote whereabouts, there was a very high probability that we would have this major Angkorian temple complex completely to ourselves. And we did. Apart from the gatekeeper and a few of his mates sitting near the main entrance, there was nobody else around, no vendors, no touts, and no annoying but often cute kids trying to earn a buck. But most importantly, there were no tourists. In fact, there isn't even a toilet at the site, and although there are constructed walkways throughout the main enclosure, you need to clamber over large and uneven stones and/or head into the undergrowth in order to reach the interesting places. It's not the first time either of us has experienced Cambodian temples in solitude, but given the mass popularity of Angkor these days, it's almost impossible to have that level of peace and quiet, not to mention the sense of Indiana Jones-style exploration at any other Angkorian temple. My initial visit to the main Angkor temples in 1992 was the first time for me, plus we were both lucky enough to have had Prasat Preah Vihear all to ourselves when we went there in 2007. We also spent the night at the then little-visited complex of Koh Ker in 2009 and didn't have to share it with anyone. When the word eventually gets out that reaching Preah Khan Kampong Svay isn't actually that difficult or expensive, read on. It will no doubt end up on the Angkor tourist circuit. Koh Ker and Prasat Preah Vihear, for example, are quite a distance from the main temples, yet are now both popular trips out of Siem Reap. But, for the time being, Preah Khan Kampong Svay remains blissfully free of visitors, and although it isn't the most impressive Angkorian temple we have seen, it is certainly one of the most memorable for that reason alone. Is Preah Khan Kampong Svay worth visiting? I'm not going to say unequivocally yes. I think you seriously have to be into your Angkorian temples, like we are, and/or have plenty of time on your hands, like we do, to contemplate a visit. I can think of at least a handful of temples that are more magnificent than Preah Khan Kampong Svay. Besides its out-of-the-way location, the other reason why Preah Khan Kampong Svay receives so few visitors compared to other Angkorian temples in the region is because hardly anyone has heard of it, and those who have assumed it is really difficult and expensive to reach. And that's brilliant news for anyone who longs to get away from Angkor hordes and have one of these astonishing temples all to themselves. There is no public transport to Preah Khan Kampong Svay. You either need to have your own transport or hire some. The three places from which to access the temples are Kampong Tom, Preah Vihear City, and Siem Reap. The latter really isn't that logical for reasons that will become apparent, but I'll start there and move on to Kampong Tom and Preah Vihear City thereafter. Accommodation near Preah Khan Kampong Svay. There are homestays in the region of $5 per person per night extra for meals, a few kilometers from the temples, but unless you want to visit them more than once or want a homestay experience, there is little point in staying overnight. It's better to sleep in either Preah Vihear City or Kampong Tom or visit the temples en route to somewhere else. What to bring to Preah Khan Kampong Svay? There is currently nowhere to buy food or drink at Preah Khan Kampong Svay, so bring sufficient supplies for your needs. The last place to buy drinks and limited snacks is the small market at the junction where you turn off NH62. Thereafter, it will be difficult to find anything. The small restaurant opposite the bus-taxi stand in Preah Vihear City opens early for breakfast. The choice is limited and no Western food is available. It is incredibly humid inside the temple complex, and there were plenty of insects that made it their sole purpose to annoy the crap out of us for the entire time we were there. Bug spray is, therefore, a good idea, as is decent footwear, especially if you want to scramble over the ruins, which is allowed at this particular site. From a crowd point of view, there is no need to worry about the timing of your visit. Likewise, the same is true for photography as the main structure faces south, so from an east versus west perspective, it doesn't matter if you are there in the morning or the afternoon. We would still recommend visiting in the morning, however. It's cooler for starters, but also it's always a good idea to get going in case anything goes wrong, like the car breaking down, for example, and to ensure you are back at your next destination before it gets dark. We thought the entrance fee was $5 per person, but when we arrived at the site, we were asked for $7 per person. We didn't get a ticket, so can't verify whether we were being ripped off to the tune of $2 each, or whether the entrance fee was genuinely $7 per person. Given that ticket prices for the main Angkor temples have increased recently, and that the kindly guy who collected our money was merely a local villager tasked with manning the site, I suspect the latter. We spent a leisurely 2 hours exploring Preah Khan Kampong Svay. The bulk of our time was spent in and around the main enclosure, but we also visited Prasat Preah Stung, where you will see the Bayon-style faces, and Prasat Damre, Elephant Temple. Both of these are located on the road that leads to the main temple and can be visited by car. What we didn't see, however, was the island temple of Prasat Preah Thkol. This temple is situated in the Baray lake and cannot be reached by car. You either have to walk there or take a moto. We worked out after our visit that this temple was only 900 meters off the road, but at the time we couldn't pinpoint its exact location. The gatekeeper can arrange a moto for you.